echo some of the ideas he started. So actually, before I start, let me give you a quick background of myself. I actually, in my GS, didn't put anything on that. I represent Kanaan Partners. We are an early stage venture fund based out here in Gurgaon, and I'll get into some of what we do towards the end. Some stuff about myself. Before this, I started a company doing music on the iPad, ran it for about a year, and then left and joined the venture world. Before that, I was at Microsoft on the online side, doing business development across Asia Pacific. And before that, I was an engineer. And actually, I'm probably one of the few engineers I would say here who's coded on the mainframe. So if there's anyone out there, let's talk afterwards.
JCL.
There you go, man. JCL. I have nightmares about it today. All right, so just a quick agenda of what I'm going to talk about. So the big chunk is going to be, so the message I want to get across is kind of, as you go today from, ideation to execution in the next 54 hours, what are some of the things you to keep in mind, and again, I draw some of this from my own experience, some of this from what I've learned from, smarter people around me. And so I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll maybe try to give us a little bit of an industry and firm overview to give you a sense of what's out there happening in the market today. So this evening is all about ideas today, right? Some that have been simmering in your head for the past many months, and some that you probably that probably struck you as you were driving to the venue. So on one hand, we say that ideas are a dime a dozen. And on the other, how do you actually find the next billion-dollar idea? So, I came up with two thoughts from people much smarter than myself to kind of help you just set a broader framework of, as you start pitching, hearing, and critiquing ideas, start from a big pool and then try to push the envelope, right? Because if it's, if you stay within the circle, then you'll remain within the circle. So definitely push the envelope in terms of what you can do next, new. So, again, I remember back, when I started Groovwork, my company, it took many months of conceptualizing before we even started doing anything worthwhile. And again, from experience, there's always 100 reasons not to do something riskier, right? You can always convince yourself it's not the right time, I'm not the right person, there's too many other people like me. But what I learned is, the first step can often be the game changer here, right? The first step, as you've taken today, actually coming here, registering, taking 54 hours of your life out here. And so I'm pretty confident, having participated in the last startup weekend in Gurgaon, that Monday evening when you've done your pitches, you will look back and definitely feel that this was probably the smartest thing you did towards achieving, pursuing your idea. And actually on that note, as you can imagine, all companies start with an idea. And even billion-dollar companies have started on just from a simple idea. So I'm wondering, if anyone can guess, nothing is moving. Actually, I didn't realize that the presentation, I'm just talking blindly. You can't actually see anything. So that's why not to use Microsoft too much. Okay, so we actually, so this was super embarrassing. Right, so this was the slide. This is where okay, so we use paper. Luckily, I actually got paper, knowing MS does these things. So as I was saying, billion-dollar companies have started just on a notepad. And I know the resolution is not that great, but can anyone identify which company is this?
Twitter.
That's it. This is Twitter. So this is the actual scratchpad. When they scratched out the broader idea, and it was a different company, different name at that time. But there you go. That's a billion-dollar company for you. So maybe as you start scribbling out your own company today, maybe don't throw away the notes because it could be worth $1 billion one day. So again, as you start going through the idea, I think someone asked this question also, and again, it's something that comes up pretty often. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why people get discouraged is, my idea is not unique. Either there is 5 other people who are doing it, or I think like what happened to me, we came up with the idea, we did the MVP, we were demoing in front of VCs, and the night before we found out there were 2 other companies who were doing it, and as you can imagine, we panicked. So this page was kind of created with the thought in mind that there's about $800 billion of value on this page to prove to you that uniqueness might not be super important, right? So Google was definitely not the first search engine. The iPod was not the first MP3 player. Facebook was definitely not the first social network. And then even closer to home, there's a company, the top right-hand company is the Penguin, is a company called Tencent, which is a Chinese internet company. It's about $36 billion today, and they were definitely not the first instant messaging platform. But people have come up with the idea, people have succeeded. So you might be wondering, why did they succeed, right? Why did they succeed when hundreds others failed? And what really is the differentiating, right? As you start hearing ideas, critiquing ideas, what really differentiates just another idea from one that will actually succeed? And actually, the differentiation is consumer insight, and I think Pankaj mentioned this as he was speaking. At the end of the day, it's all about knowing your customer, knowing their pain points, and then figuring out a solution to resolve those pains. And nothing like using our favorite brand, Apple, to use it. Again, I'm a Microsoftie, so it's a love-hate here, but I still use it. So again, a lot of this is basic 101, but as everyone knows how the environment where iPod launched, hundreds of other MP3 players. And clearly they figured out something that the customer wanted beyond what the other 10 guys did. And at that time, they came up with a simple design equation, which was a customer optimizes around the largest number of songs divided by the smallest physical size. So let me have all my album in a smallest size as possible. And you see as the company progressed that they stayed true to this vision, right? So today, again, this is from, today if you want to buy an iPod, the company has actually, Apple has actually segmented the market across different form factors, different sizes, and different prices. So today as a consumer, you can actually calibrate yourself and choose the right size, storage, and price configuration that works for you. And so in some of this, again, as you start thinking through your idea and your customer, try to go one level beyond what are the customer's pain points, what are the metrics he or she looks for in a solution, and what are the things that then you will provide. And to that end, again, as I said, again, I'm a big believer, and I've always seen that a customer-led development always wins in the end. So again, as you start thinking through your ideas, what are the few questions to keep in mind over the next 2 days as you start developing the product? So I've listed a few questions that at least I've used in the past. I think the first is again just the pain, right? So figure out an idea is an idea, but what is the pain that it's solving for the customer? And then related to that, is your product going to be a nice to have or a need to have? Because that determines then what is the value that's getting created for the customer. The number third thing, what is the customer using as an alternative? And that's important on 2 levels. One is, of course, who are you trying to replace? And B, who gets hurt the most if you are successful? Because for a lot of ideas, there are barriers to entry, right? So presumably, if it's a common problem, there are already solutions. Who do you have to beat to actually get into the market? And then every solution is a trade-off. As I said, as you try to optimize, as you first understand what are the axes on which your customer thinks about the problem, and then you figure out which of these axes do I want to optimize. Right? You can have a lot of speed. You can be cheap. You can be easy to use. Multiple axes that you have to kind of trade off. Figure out what's more important for your customer, and then trade off with them. The last two around payment, who pays, and the value capture versus creation is, of course, it comes slightly later down. But again, if you want to really start a company and become the next Facebook, Google, then you have to figure out you don't just need to solve a problem, you actually need to capture some of the value that gets created. So let me give you a very simple example. In this room right now, I could, for example, distribute a Pepsi to everyone, right? And that would create a lot of value for you because presumably you're thirsty, and a lot of value would get created. Now, I would not capture any of that value, right? But if I were to go to a startup and say, listen, there are 100 smart people in this room that some of them might love to work with you. So why don't you, strike an advertising deal with me? I'll give them a Pepsi and we'll put your logo on it and you pay me. At that point then, there is value still getting created, but I'm capturing part of it. So that's where you have to figure out, and again, you're not paying for it, but someone else is paying to resolve your pain, which is, I'm thirsty, I need something to drink. So think in those terms around, definitely solve the problem, but also figure out how do you as a company capture some of the value that gets created over there. And so I think, going back to what Pankaj started in the beginning, the concept of MVP, which is, I think, pretty well used now. As you start, figuring out the right idea, knowing your customer, and finally implementing, try to keep MVP kind of at the center of your mind. And just a little bit about MVP. I mean, the idea actually is pretty simple. Minimum viable product. It's essentially the smallest product that you can imagine that gets you accepted from your early adopters and lets you test out your product vision. So, let's take an example to make it more concrete. I'm just thinking on the fly here. But let's imagine that someone wants to create the next Naukri or jobs.com, right? And so you want to create something new where I upload my resume and it does some smart filtering and maybe it gives me the exact best job that is right for me, right? Instead of me competing with hundreds of other jobs and so on and so forth. If you were to build that during 54 hours, to A, build a platform, to B, get resumes onto it, and to C, do the filtering, and D, output the result is non-trivial. So then you have to figure out what of those is actually the core, like what is the core thing that I'm trying to prove or disprove here? And maybe that is that, the filtering is the key thing, right? So can I have a dummy system where I populate a bunch of resumes and I can figure out that filtering so that, there might not be a pretty interface, but at least the filtering works and I can pop out some results. And the rest, of course, you can, just manage with pretty PowerPoint. So, again, as you go through what you need to execute, what you want to build out, I would spend a lot of time on kind of stress testing your MVP before you code. Because, again, once you start, it's always harder to trace back. But just get to the minimum thing that you actually want to prove in the next 54 hours and only work on that. So, actually, those were kind of the broad slides I had. I'll talk a little bit before I go on to industry review about pitching, because I was part of the Gurgaon Startup Weekend as well as one of the judges. And so I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that Pankaj had focused in his presentation. So probably the most important thing you should take away from here, apart from the customer focus, is the fact that at the end of the day, you're going to pitch, right? Each of you will get 5 minutes to pitch. So all 54 hours is going to get compressed into 5 minutes. So I would spend a lot of time on those 5 minutes, right? You don't want to blow it because at the end of the day, of course, we're here to network, but it's always fun to win. So, so have a well thought out story, spend the time, especially as you start getting closer to Saturday evening, night, when some of your product vision is clear, maybe something is working, maybe something isn't. Get some parallel track on the presentation, what you're going to say, who's going to say it, and definitely practice as many times as you can. One thing that worked last time very well is the customer feedbacks, because again, a lot of your ideas, there's only so much you can do in 54 hours and in 5 minutes, but nothing convinces someone like the customer saying, I love this. So definitely use that, take videos, take customer testimonials, any way you can. I would definitely try to work that in, because that gives you a lot of credibility. One thing that Pankaj again mentioned is, numbers. So definitely do not jam-pack this thing with a fancy financial model to try to prove that you're going to go cash flow positive in year 3. Because that is not the spirit of the event, and B, at the stage where most of your ideas are, it's not relevant, right? You still have just an MVP. The businesses yet to be created. Do have a financial model if you want to. So very high level stuff on. Okay, this is my revenue might look like. This is some sense of cost, but it's definitely more interesting to talk about. This is how many customers I'm going to get. This is some of the operational metrics. Because then those someone can say are achievable or not. Revenue and P&L and EBITDA and those kind of fancy numbers just are harder to understand and harder to believe. I think the last thing that again people saw from last time was that the format is pretty open. So get creative, because I think last time people really tried to do different things. Whether they were giving out handing out demos of their product on phone or some interesting creative uses of videos. So definitely I would go all out because you want to stand out. So I think again, as I said, the 5 minutes are crucial. So I would definitely spend. I would give it its importance. So last couple of things on kind of just the broader market, and this is a slide that it is a slide. So this is the slide on the venture funding today in India. Right. So from 2008 to 2011 year to date, this kind of tracks how much venture funding has gone on a per year basis. And so there's 2 bars. The blue is the early stage. So to younger companies, and the orange is to growth companies. So for you, it's if you were to form a company today and you were to get for funding, the blue bar is what's relevant. And again, the big takeaway from this is if you have an idea and you feel it is your passion, there hasn't really been a better time to start a company, because if you look at the blue bar, it's accelerating rapidly, right? From 2009 to today, a lot more money is getting pumped in. You have VCs who are willing to take bets because suddenly, we seem to have a lot of critical things coming together, right? 100 million people on the internet, 3G IMAX, 800, 900 million mobile connections, and of course, the e-commerce boom. So, funding, which is of course, can be a critical factor, suddenly is available. And of course, then you have events like this where actually, people get together. You could find your CTOs or your programmers here today. So definitely use this event, because people and money are the 2 hardest things to typically come by. And in this room, you already have both. People already here, and then the geeks on a plane, in case some of you might not know, are a bunch of investors who essentially get on a plane and travel all over the world, and their entire objective is fund new and interesting ideas. So 18 of them are coming in tomorrow, including Dave McClure. So an amazing platform really to pitch your idea, to get world-class attention, and of course some money. Couple of things about my fund. So Kanaan we're in our 25th year. We are a worldwide fund in the US, Silicon Valley, New York corridor, Israel, and India. I'm not going to bore you here. We have a lot of money under management, and we've helped a lot of companies succeed, and we've invested in a lot of companies. This is our India portfolio. So some of them you might recognize, Bharat Matrimony, Naptol, Board Exchange. But at a very broad level, we are technology investors, and specifically early stage technology. So some seed, a lot of Series A. When kind of companies are starting to prove their model and they need capital to really accelerate. So we've done about 13 investments till now, and again, we try to be active on the early stage, especially. So that is kind of what I had prepared. I'm happy to talk about anything you guys might like. My email address is below, so feel free to ping me. Again today, later, as you start conceptualizing or treating. Open to anybody. I guess there are none, so I think it's Pankaj around. So I'm curious, how many people have an e-commerce idea? Anything to do with e-commerce? Right. Yeah, as you must have seen, e-commerce has there's about $500 million of venture money today in e-commerce. So good and bad, good or bad, I guess. But too easy. Great. So I think Pankaj, we're done. But thank you very much. Again, look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Prashant.